Hello, this is the European History Backup video for Wednesday, 16th September, AD 2020. Exciting so far, isn't it? Will you please turn that fan down to 1? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated and take out your syllabus pack. We're going to talk about the case study whose topic we chose on Monday and on Tuesday for those of you who are at home. So please open it up to the 50 fact sheet partway through your syllabus pack, which is the packet that has the syllabus on the front. Complicated, but thought I'd give you that little hint. So the page is indicated by the secret code case study research parentheses 50 fact sheet on parentheses revised 8/11/20. So let's talk about the thesis and the research that you'll be doing. Some of this you may have heard on Monday because I tried rushing it in to you guys and it didn't work. So I'll be starting from the beginning. First off, topic. The topic is, you're in the wrong, I think. You need to be in the one that starts with the syllabus. The topic is what you signed up for. So one of you may have signed up for the Black Death, or for Leonardo da Vinci, or for the Battle of Lepanto, or something like that. So that's your topic, and you should know it, so you should write it in now, because why not? Now, thesis is going to be interesting when we come to thesis is going to be interesting when we come to the essay. The essay portion is an argumentative thesis. So you're going to make an argument about it. For example, here's an argument about the Black Death. Not sure it's a good enough argument, but it at least gets you into the ballpark. The fact that Europeans killed cats in massive numbers because they are the devil's animal is somewhat ironic, because cats were the only predators that killed the rats upon which the fleas that carried the disease were functioned. There, how's that for completely lost? So it's kind of ironic that Europeans killed the cats who were the only protection they had against the rats who carried the fleas who carried the virus. There's your argument. It's a statement of fact. It's ironic. How about a better one? Panic made Europeans do things in the face of the Black Death that were completely counterproductive to actually fighting the disease. Not that we know anything about that now. Mandatory masks. Counterproductive. And then you can talk about how panicked Europeans blamed the Jews for poisoning the wells with the Black Death, so they engaged in pogroms and other anti-Jewish action. They blamed witches, of course, and witches obviously are evil, but in this case, witches' obvious evil took the form of creating a disease. So those Europeans who weren't killing Jews began to burn witches. And here's where the cats come in. What animal do witches have? Meow. So Tabby gets axed or burned at the stake with Mom Cat. You can talk about other things that the Europeans did that were not productive. And you can associate that with panic, and it's panic that you're making the argument about. So, do you have any questions about the difference between a topic, which is a fact item that you're studying, and a thesis, which is a controversy that you are arguing? One thing that we are clear about, I do not want you to find a middle road. When you're making an argument, that's not the time to be moderate. I want you to argue a point of view that is controversial, because that will energize your paper. Instead of being a humdrum recitation of facts that anyone can look up, it will be energized by the tension created by your desire to successfully demonstrate the validity of your argument. In other words, because you're arguing something, it's going to be more interesting to read and write than it would be if you are simply stating a bunch of facts. And the death of a good argument is, well, I see truth on both sides. In most cases, there's truth on both sides. Hitler loved children and dogs. He loved going on country walks in the mountainside. What a guy! But it doesn't take away from the genocide. It doesn't take away from starting World War II. It's like these people that argue that violent criminals in their neighborhoods are wonderful people because they act, to protect people from certain kinds of crime. They're still predators, parasitically leeching off of you. Yeah, that mafioso, he helped, start an orphanage. Great. How did he get the money to do that? Oh, by turning neighborhood girls into prostitutes and turning neighborhood people into drug addicts that he then supplied. What a guy! No, take a stand. Don't be mealy-mouthed. Don't be milquetoast. Argue a point of view, because that is the point of the thesis essay. And if you start thinking about arguments that you can make, you might end up doing 2 or 3 theses before you come up with one that you like. You're also welcome. You may want to pull this in. Otherwise, I trample it. You might also wish to talk to me about it. You know where I am. Come ask me for suggestions on the thesis, especially early on in the year. I'm happy to help. As time goes on, I'll want you to come up with your own theses, obviously. So, I see no questions on what a thesis is and how it's distinct from. Do any of you not understand why making an argumentative thesis is important in the study of human history? One of the uses of history is to draw conclusions about its meaning, to find lessons in it that we can learn from. Otherwise, it's another bunch of useless facts. History is not useless if you understand what it's for. Look at what people have done and learn from their successes and their failures, learn from their insights and their assumptions, prejudices, and blind spots. Learn so that you don't make the same mistake needlessly. In your life, you should have the ambition to make your own mistakes, not someone else's. So, make your own mistakes. The way you draw conclusions about history is you make judgments. That's what an argument is. You're making a judgment about the meaning of something. So, see me. Okay. Sources. Primary source. What's a primary source? We've talked about these. Just going to pick someone unless I get a volunteer. Mr. Rigg. A document. Like from the book. Like something written at the time. That's a primary source. A primary source can be memoirs, letters, anything that is produced by people living through the historical period. That's a primary source. You got to have one. Gots to. Gots to. In addition to that, you need 4 sources. Other. 2 of them must be books. 2 of them can be webs or books. All of your sources can be found online if you use books online. Why am I so happy insistent upon books? Does anyone wish to guess? Mr. Ray, second time helping a sleepy, distracted class. Yes?
Is it to give the jobs?
It is to give lumber workers jobs. That's a good answer for most things. It's like violence. It's often the answer. But in fact, in this case, it's not just about the paper that goes into making books. Yes?
It's about
Thank you,
actually having to find information and piece together instead of just kind of having.
Yes, there is part of that. Look, one of the great joys of my childhood is largely denied to your generation. At least as I'm sure some of you do it, and I hope more of you do. Okay, it's a rainy Saturday afternoon. I've got nothing better to do. So young me goes down to the local library. And I do this in college too, but it's a better library. And I wander the stacks. I don't wander everything. I'm not interested in children's literature. I'm not interested in fashion. I tend to wander the history stacks, maybe religion, maybe architecture, art, and I see what catches my eye. The stacks are the rows of books on shelves. And I come up with a handful of books that I bring over to a table. I set them down. I go through them. Now, these could be books on things I've never studied before. It's a way of discovering whole new avenues of history. And at the end, I pick my favorite books of the stack I got. And I go and I take them out and I read them. Now, when I look at books, I start by looking at the title, obviously, because that's all you can see when they're in the stacks. But I also look at the pictures. I look at the maps. I look at other graphic images. I read some samples. I try to get a sense of what the book is about, and I also try to get a sense of whether or not the author's style speaks to me. I have learned about more detailed subjects of history doing that than I ever could have doing a keyword search on a search engine. In fact, wandering the stacks to see what catches your eye is the opposite of a search engine. Because instead of having a predetermined idea that's going to guide your research, you're just walking around to see what catches your eye. You are inviting God or the universe or the random factors to align in such a fashion that you have an entirely unexpected opening to a whole new world of knowledge. And you'd never get that if you were purposely going there for a reason. So, yeah, paper books, that's part of it. But there is another thing that most paper books that call themselves nonfiction have to do that websites do not. What does a book purporting to be nonfiction have to do that Joe's website doesn't have to do? Basically. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I was going to say truthful or not.
Yeah. If a publishing company publishes a book filled with slander, lies, libel, and other nonsense masquerading as fact, that book publisher can be sued and might lose the lawsuit and have to pay up lots of money. So a book has to go through an editorial process, particularly if it purports to be nonfiction, whereby the publisher says, yeah, I'll stand behind this. Or no, I won't stand behind this as nonfiction, but if you want to publish this as a rant, I think it'll sell. Fine, we'll publish it as a political satire or as a political polemic, but it's not going to be called objective history because they are legally bound to certain standards, right? Joe's website doesn't have any of those controls. These days, the only controls it has are the commie Seattle companies and other Silicon Valley companies that have decided that they are going to try to interpose themselves between their customers and what they call fake news. And I don't use the term commie lightly. Yes, they are sort of left wing. But one of the things that communists classically do is turn news into propaganda. They prune factual reporting to fit a certain narrative and to hide others. And what YouTube and Facebook and other engines have been doing over the last few years is they have been picking sides, they have been suppressing some information because it doesn't suit them, and they have been emphasizing other information out of all proportion because it does suit their narrative. That is exactly what communist governments do when they have control over the media. So, if you rely upon media and you think that those companies will protect you from Crazy Joe and his conspiracy theories, well, maybe, maybe not. But Crazy Joe can still have a website saying almost anything, and there's no legal recourse. So books are necessary not so much because I want to give Leverman jobs, not so much because I think it's wonderful to wander through libraries, although I do, but because there is a process that the text has gone through that should make it more reliable. That's it. That's my only reason for doing that. And if you, again, find online sources that have gone through that process, use them. Use them. Any questions on sources? Oh, you are using, see it says here, MLA format to cite these sources. So use MLA format to cite these sources, please. Minor details, facts, and pieces of data. Well, you put your little facts here. Why? Because in my day, teachers all said, use index cards. Have an index card for each fact and list where it comes from. Blah, 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 blah. I hate index cards. Hate them with a passion. I loathe and despise them. I've never been good at them. They are easy to lose. They're easy to get out of order. They're a giant pain in the neck in a moment. So, what I recommend for you to do, and what I insist that you do, in fact, is that you gather 50 facts about your topic. Will you need more? Maybe. Depends on how well you prune your facts. But you list the facts in summary form on these lines. There's 20 lines on the front, 30 lines on the back. But in addition, and I'll take your question, in addition to listing the facts, you list the source. Is the source the primary? Is it the first, second, third, or fourth? You put P, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And your 50 fact sheet should have roughly, I'm not going to nickel and dime you, but roughly equivalent amounts of information from each of your 4 sources. If you've got 45 from source number 1, and then 1 source from your others, no, that won't work. Have rough balance between your sources. So you have the fact, you have the number of your source, or P if it's the primary, and you have the page number where you can get it, or the web page name, or whatever. Something to help you and help me find it if I want to look it up. Thank you for waiting.
It was more of a statement of agreement
Mhm.
that if I turn this sideways and it's not fully closed, 50 index cards are gonna go flying real easily.
Oh yeah,
And then it'll be 52 card pickup, but not playing cards.
exactly. That's happened to me more than once. It's one of the reasons why I hate index cards. In fact, I think the next time I go out to the range, I'm going to bring index cards to my target. I'll see how many index cards a 308 rifle cartridge can penetrate, as opposed to a 40 caliber Smith & Wesson pistol cartridge or a 357 round. So those are the calibers I use. And I imagine, they will penetrate different thicknesses of index cards. That sounds fun. Okay, there. Thank you. You helped me come up with a new way to waste time and ammo. Any questions on how you are to cite these sources? You put the citations here, the facts, the source, and the page number. Yes?
Just wondering, if we find a published essay that is factual and has sources in it, be able to use that.
Of course you will. You can use it either as a web source without any problem, or if you are sure that the essay has gone through a process of editorializing that says the publisher stands behind this as nonfiction, An Atlantic Monthly article is not nonfiction. It is an essay. So try to decide using your wisdom and judgment, common sense. Is this purporting to be nonfiction, objective, or is this a person's opinion? If it's a person's opinion and it's gone through an editorial process, fine. If it is a person's opinion and it's published as an opinion piece in a magazine, and there's no pretense at it even trying to be objective, then I'd put it as one of the web sources. Thank you for asking. Okay, so that's, yes.
So for websites, do we just like call on?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what you would do is, if there are subsections on the website, then put those names down.
Okay.
Okay. Just to make it easier to track down. So, any other questions on the 50 fact sheet? Okay, seeing none, moving on. The profile is probably the most rigorous research I'm going to ask you to do this year, and there are 4 of them. What the profile is like reverse engineered encyclopedia article. So let's look at what's in it. First off, you put your name, the date, period. Newspaper. A newspaper article summarizes who, what, when, where, why, how about the information. So what are the basic qualities of your topic? The basic who, what, when, where, why. If you were doing the first paragraph of a newspaper story that had to get all of this, what would your headline be and what would your paragraph be? So in this paragraph, you're synthesizing the essential information about your topic into a single paragraph and you're handwriting it here. Any questions on that? Next, you have a 10-item timeline. I used to insist on a 20-item timeline, but I've gotten more reasonable over the years. So you have 10 items. You place them in order, first to last. First to last, going down, going down. Now, each timeline item you will see is divided into 3 sections. The upper left are the dates. The upper right is the title. The bottom line is a quick phrase explaining why it matters, why it's important. So if you have, what year was Caesar assassinated? Somewhere, I think, in the 50s BC, the 40s BC. In any event, the year Caesar was assassinated, that's up there in the upper left. BCE, if you want to be politically correct. The upper right, Julius Caesar assassinated. Significance. Resumed civil war between his heirs and his assassins. Each timeline item has the date, the title, and a phrase saying why it matters. Any questions there? Then, that's your chronology section A. Your paragraph essay, explain what began, sparked, or initiated this chain of events and why. So you decide what started your story. And I don't want to hear, well, Julius Caesar's mommy loved Julius Caesar's daddy very much, and they got married, and they decided to learn how to have children. No. What began the event is historically what is the causal factor to Caesar trying to get power. Flip it. Then, paragraph C. What ended it? What culminated or concluded this chain of events, and why? In this case, you might argue Octavian's victory in the Civil War. But you could also say Caesar's assassination was the end of Caesar's attempt. That's a judgment call. So, timeline of 10 items, and then what began and what ended the events, and those are judgment calls. I see no questions, so we're moving on. Section 3, core beliefs, religious, philosophical, political. So, here's where we begin the format used pretty much throughout most of the rest of this project. List 4 core beliefs or important ideas relating to your topic. You list them to the left of the line, and to the right of the line, you put a phrase explaining what they are. Title, description. Left of the line, right of the line. Any questions there? We're going to use that same list format for most of the rest. The event, the title, the idea, the philosophy, the faith, and what it is, and a brief description. Then there is paragraph B, Pick one of them and explain how the core beliefs of those involved shaped events. So, for example, hello, machine. I have no idea why you did that. In any event, hopefully it's not the stream going out. Hopefully you can still see me there. How does belief shape events? That should be easy. Decide on what example you're going to use and write a paragraph explaining how faith relates to the events. Questions? Next. 4. Notable events and historically significant biographies. A. List 4 notable individuals in these events, briefly noting in a phrase what made each significant. 4 times date, person, key accomplishment. So, if you are talking about the assassination of Julius Caesar, Caesar could be one of the people, but he might not. There's Cassius, there's Brutus, there's Mark Antony, and there's Octavian. And those would be fine, because they all relate to the assassination and the aftermath of the assassination of Julius Caesar. And you use the area here to describe why they are significant. Questions? Okay. You at home, if you have questions, write them down, bring them in, and talk about them with me tomorrow in class. Next page. B, paragraph essay. Explain the key fulcrum or turning point event that shaped this topic and why it was key. History has certain turning points. Sometimes they're battles, sometimes they're inventions, sometimes they're assassinations, sometimes they're random factors. What is the fulcrum, the turning point of the history of this topic? Identify it and say why you think it is. You see how judgment plays into all of this. You've got to assert, this is the turning point. You've got to explain, this is why in this paragraph. C, notable people. You know that list of 4 people here? Pick 2 of them, write more extensive paragraphs saying what they did in relation to the event and why they're important. See no questions, so I assume you understand that. Section 5, foreign affairs, alliances, rivalries, and wars. So here you list 4 encounters between your topic and something outside. It could be another country, it could be another country that you have alliance with, that you fight with. If you're talking about a religion, what other religious groups or events impinge on your religion? Civilization, what outside civilizations impinge on your civilization? So list 4 outside factors and what they did, why they're important, and then next page, flip it. That's it. Follow along at home, kids. Paragraph B, describe. Describe the significance and effects of interactions with one of these outside elements. So you're describing in detail one encounter between your event and something outside. I see no questions. Is there a question? So you point over there.
It was more than this. It was more with the Black Death, which is the one I'm doing, which is a disease. I mean,
Well, here's what you could do.
I'm thinking of what I did.
Okay, well, give me your idea.
It's like, because the disease isn't really gonna make an alliance with the country, but hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
But certain things are gonna happen because it exists, and so what it causes to happen, big things that change.
Here's my answer. My answer is the credo of the United States Marine Corps. Improvise, adapt, overcome. If you have a topic like a disease, you have to adapt this section to something analogous. Here are some ways you can do it. The Black Death is not fought like a disease by Europe. It's fought like a religious malady. It's fought like a moral failing. So you can talk about that. The Black Death inspires certain cultural things, like ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. ring around the rosy. That's the buboes that you get during the bubonic plague. Pocket full of posies. Flowers used to hide the stench of death and decomposing human bodies. Ashes, ashes. The bodies are burned by the local authorities. We all fall down. Everybody dies. It's a grim song. I'm sorry to spoil something from your childhood if I just did, but it is a grim. Yeah, I am sorry, but it is a grim song. But it comes out of the Black Death. So you'd find something that's extraneous to the disease that relates to it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Section 6. That's Roman numeral VI. Military science, science and exploration. List and describe 4 of the military, scientific, or exploratory accomplishments or scientific innovations of the time and place. So in the case of the Black Death, you may do just the mid 1300s. What were discoveries, what were scientific inventions, and so forth. But here is sort of how the society fights and how the society discovers what it discovers, how it explores. Time and place. And you've got 2 paragraphs where you describe how conflict or warfare was waged at this time, and that's a straightforward question. Whatever your topic, how was conflict and warfare waged at this time? Did they use pikes? Did they use harquebuses? Did they use harquebuses? Did they use flintlock muskets? Did they use cartridge firearms, machine guns, atom bombs? How were the wars fought? Paragraph C, explain how exploration or scientific discovery shaped these events. And here, again, you're going to have to adapt the question to your topic. I see no questions. We move on. Next page. Daily life, section 7. There's 4 aspects of daily life. This could be how they ate, what their table manners were, what their other manners were, how they dated one another, what fashion was, what did they do when somebody had an injury, did they bleed them to get the evil humors out, anything from daily life. This is social history. So you list 4 things, you describe them briefly in the lines, and you write a paragraph about one that interests you the most. Now we go to geographia, geography. You can fit a map here and paste or staple it in, but I would rather have you just attach a scanned and printed map or draw a map. What I expect, though, is for you to explain, see the description down here? What the map is telling, what story it's telling, what information is key. So you put a map here for me to see, and then you explain in one line, one sentence, what story it's telling, what a person can or should learn from it. So what I'm testing here is your ability to pick maps and tables and other graphic images and explain what they mean. In the case of the Black Death, one of your things may not be a map. One of your things may be a sketch of a plague doctor and their distinctive mask. And you could describe why that distinctive mask was there and what it meant. So your description is as important as the map or visual or graphic that you have. And there are 2 of them. So you should have at least one map showing the spread of the disease, but you get the idea. Now, beneath that, paragraph essay B, describe how geography shaped or was shaped by the events in question. Geography is the bones of history. If history is a living body, geography shapes it. If the bone structure was different, the history would be different. There's a reason why there's so much war in Europe up here, and it has to do with the geography of the North European plain. There is no natural frontier between France, the Low Country, Germany, Poland, Lithuania, White Russia, and Russia. You know where the territory ends of one and the territory of the other begins? Where the last war left the armies. The line of control. That is why there are so many wars in Europe. The geography of the open North European plain. Good fences make good neighbors, and unlike the border between France and Spain, where there's the Pyrenees Mountains, or the border between France and Italy, or Germany and Italy, which are the Alps, no, there's no borders here. It's all open country, winner take all. So how does geography affect your particular topic? I see no questions. Now we come to section 9, visual. Attach a visual, a cartoon, a painting, a poster, a symbol that tells a story about your topic. This is actually more apropos for your plague doctor. Below, explain what it means and why it's emblematic of your topic. So you describe what it is you attach, and then you do your document analysis. What's the topic? What's the document? Context, content, critique. Context, content, critique. So if you're doing a political cartoon about the Kaiser and World War I, devouring the world, and there is a cartoon to that effect, you would have that picture of the Kaiser with his spiky mustache trying to eat planet Earth, and context, you say as much as you learn, but basically it's a war propaganda poster, anti-German, pro-British. Content, Kaiser trying to eat the world. Kaiser's the Emperor of Germany in World War I. And critique, you explain why you think it is or is not effective propaganda. You can do the same thing with a table or any other visual graphic that you attach. Questions? See how big this is? That's it. That's your profile. That comes due soon. The 50 fact sheet, let's see, this coming Monday, you have chapter 14 due. Let's look for European history. So, week 4. Yeah, Monday, September 21st, or Tuesday, September 22nd, chapter 4, survey 14 is due. Then, the following Monday, Monday, September 28th, or Tuesday, September 29th, chapter survey 16, not 15, 16 is due. But that Wednesday, 2 days after the chapter 16 survey is due, case study 1, 50 fact sheet comes due. That's Wednesday, Wednesday, September 30th, or Thursday, October 1st. No! Yeah, I have it written here badly. I think it's Thursday, October 1st. Then the following Monday, October 5th, the profile is due. Then the following Monday after that, the essay is due. I'm not even going to talk about the essay just yet. I'll save that until tomorrow. So, do you have any questions about the profile overall? Its purpose, what you need to do. It's a big project. And you should do it simultaneous to all the other stuff you're doing. Question? Okay. Then we're done with the explanation of the profile. Slaves flood the Roman economy. There is a classic story of a legionary who serves 20 years in the legions. He's given his best years to fight Rome's enemies. Maybe they were Hannibal, maybe they were the Greeks in the east, Mithridates, whatever. And in this period, between the end of the Punic Wars and the fall of the Roman Republic, the story is this farmer, after all this time, goes home to his family farm, which he's left in the care of his wife and his sons and his relatives, his brothers. And he can't even recognize the valley of his home, because instead of being a patchwork of family farms, it's a single latifundia. A latifundia is a massive plantation around the Mediterranean. He goes down the main road, which is the only thing that's the same. He finds the spot on the main road where his little path to his farm would be. It's not there. Instead, there's a stone wall and a wheat field behind it. He jumps the stone wall, goes through the wheat field, and finds some small evidence of the basement hole underneath his old farmhouse. That's it. Nothing else remains. So he continues up the road, and he finds a massive latifundista mansion, the mansion of the plantation owner. And the butler comes out and tries to run him off until he realizes that this is one of the farmers who used to own this valley. And the butler explains to the farmer, without letting him inside, uncouth, that what happened to all the farmers is while the men were away fighting in the legions, the women and the old and the young had difficulty keeping up the farm, so they took out loans. They took out loans from the master of this mansion, and they couldn't pay them back, so they lost their farms. Where's my family? Well, most of them wander off and end up in Rome. Look for them there. Sorry. So his farm is gone. He makes his way to Rome and looks, but Rome's a city of huge proportions. Finally, he goes to an old officer friend of his, somebody he worked for in the army, who's also retired, and the guy welcomes him with great honor. He passes through a lobby filled with a bunch of desperate-looking people, invites him in, sits down, has a drink, and says, well, are you enjoying your retirement? Is there anything I can do? And the old soldier says, well, actually, he tells him the story about how his farm was lost and how he can't find his family. And his old officer says, don't worry. We're old comrades. I'm happy to help. I'll find your family. So, and I'll do it as a gift and gratitude for your service. So he's filled with gratitude. He tells the guy, his old officer, where he's staying, and he looks around Rome, and it's also practically unrecognizable. He starts looking for a job because he doesn't have a farm anymore. This guy is an old soldier. He's an engineer. He's good with metalworking, blacksmith. He's good with woodworking, carpentry. He's good with pottery. He's good with digging. But he's having trouble finding work. In the midst of this search for work, the old officer gets in touch and says, your family's living on the streets in the slum. And the officer says, they're now at my mansion, getting cleaned up. Come visit when you can. And, of course, the old soldier drops everything and finds his family. And for the first time in years, the family has had a decent meal and a bath and all the other things. So the man has found his family. The officer says, how's everything going? And the guy says, well, I've been looking for work, but I hear the same story everywhere. Gee, I'd love to help you. I'd love to give you, a veteran, a job. You're probably better than any of the people working in this blacksmithery. But I can't. See, these are all slaves. I don't have to pay them. I bought them. They're mine like livestock. They are livestock, in fact. And therefore, I can charge a certain price for my goods. All of my competitors do the same thing. They use slaves. If I hire you, you're a free Roman. I have to pay you a wage. That's going to increase the overhead that I have to pay to make every hammer, every nail. If I do that, I have to charge more. If I charge more, I'm out of business. I'm sorry, I can't give you a job. And that says the blacksmiths, that says the carpenters, that says the construction companies. He can't find work. The officer says, yeah, it's terrible. So many slaves. As a slave brings them drinks, of course. You know what? You're a free Roman. There's no way you should be in this situation. But you are, so let me help you. I will become your patron. You will be my client. I'll make sure that your family has a decent income. All you have to do in return is show up every morning and wait in the lobby and see if there's anything I have to do for you. If there is, you do it. You're going to be working for me. And if I don't have anything by a certain hour, I'll send you on your way and you can live your life. At first, the soldier says no, but after a while, the desperation, his money runs out, and he says yes. So now, a free soldier, family farmer, has been turned into a desperate client, completely at the mercy of his wealthy patron. His political freedom, gone. He's going to vote whatever way the patron tells him to vote. If the patron needs a rent-a-mob, he's there. If the patron needs something done that isn't exactly legal, he's there. More and more free Romans enter this new class called the proletariat, the urban poor, the Roman mob. And the Roman mob begins threatening the city of Rome itself. If you have the power to destroy a thing, you can control it. And the Roman mob, the proletariat, has the power to control Rome. What to do? Well, about 100 years before Christ, Gaius and Tiberius Gracchus, the Gracchi, two brothers, each in their turn become tribune of the plebs. You'll recall a tribune of the plebs is like a labor leader for the lower classes, usually for the plebeian class, but these days also for the proletariat. Tribunes are political officials that have two special powers. It's like Superman can fly and Batman is wealthy and tough. The first special power is the power of veto. They can stop any law. Tribunes can't themselves directly propose laws in the Senate or the Committee of the Centuries, but they can stop anything by saying veto, which means I forbid. They can stop a fight in the street. They can stop a Senate law. They have that power. The second thing the tribunes have is they are inviolate. Do any of you recall what inviolate means? From Latin or from ancient history last year? If you had to decode that word with your English knowledge, what do you think inviolate might mean? Think about how the word is spelled. Yeah?
Can't violate them.
Yeah! Thank you. You can't violate them. If a tribune of the plebs is in the course of his tribunicum duties, and you lay a finger on their arm saying, can you wait for a moment? That's a death penalty offense. If the tribune wants to push it, you can be executed. You don't touch them. You can't touch this. You don't touch them in the course of their duty. You don't even lay a finger on them. So they have the power of veto, and they are inviolate. Now they get a bunch of politicians who are allies of theirs to propose a solution to the proletariat problem. And the solution is to have a maximum acreage for all latifundia. All of the great plantations will be limited to a certain maximum size. Well, what about the rest? Well, the state buys the rest from the latifundistas at a low rate. The government never pays full price for anything that they take. And you divide that up and put the proletariat back on their farm, on a family farm. And the proletariat farmer is no longer a member of the proletariat. He's a member of the plebeian class again. He's working on his own land. He's an independent fellow. He's making his own way. And he will slowly pay back the loan for the land that the state has given him. Now that seems like a reasonable answer to the problem of this massive amount of urban poor, the Roman mob. However, it violates the Roman Constitution and it violates property rights. Why on earth would a latifundista who acquired land legally give it up to a lowball government estimate just to give a bunch of poor people, quote, back their land when those poor people couldn't keep the land in the first place? It's like modern people today. Oh, there's so much poverty in the world, we should do something. Okay, this is what we're going to do. There is an inequality in the amount of electronics that exists for people of a certain age around the world. Would you agree? Most people would say, yeah, it's kind of true. Little people in Africa don't have the same iPhones and iPads and laptops and internet that we do. So here's what we're going to do about it. So far, most people are like, yeah, we should have electronic equivalency around the world. Electronic equivalency, because electronics matter. So what we're going to do is we're going to send police into every home and confiscate every electronic device except one. Every American can pick the one electronic device they get to keep. Everything else, taken and distribute it to the poor people of the world. They will come into your homes. They will search your stuff. They will take what you have, except for whatever it is you choose to keep. And if you replace that, you can only replace it with one other thing. How many people would be for that? Especially if you're given a few pennies on the dollar that you paid for the electronics in the first place. It's your property. It was bought legally. Well, don't you care about the poor of the world? Sure. But not to the extent of giving up my property. Not to the extent of letting the police come into my home and divide up my property and give it to a bunch of strangers. So Rome politically was split. The Optimates were the people who opposed the Gracchi and their ideas of land reform, and the Populares were the popular party, the People's Party, the party that believed in the land reform. At the height of the crisis, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, each in their turn, a few years apart, were assassinated. They were assassinated in public as a speech that they were giving turned violent, and the people at the forefront of beating them to death were clients of rich senators who were optimates. These were obviously political assassinations, yet nobody was charged, except for some poor schmoes in one of the two cases. The poor schmoes were punished, but none of the people who ordered this, none of the people who made it happen, none of the corrupt people in the courts who wouldn't charge the obvious guilty people, wouldn't charge them, wouldn't even put them through a court process. Nothing happened. From this moment, political assassination becomes the order of the day. Why talk to your opponents when you can just off them? That to me is the fulcrum. That to me is the turning point. And it has to do with the proletariat. What comes later? Well, the icing on the cake, the trump of doom, the end of the turning point. Gaius Marius is offered the command of a non-existent army when Italy is invaded by the barbarians, the Teutons, the Cimbri, and so forth. Marius raises an army from the proletariat. Instead of a normal Roman army, like a Roman or normal army where you get your own weapons, you bring your own weapons. Rich people are in the front line of combat because they can afford full body armor. Or middle-class people are in the middle because they can afford a helmet and shield and a spear. Poor people are in back with a little leather cap and a spear. No, instead of that, Marius is going to buy everyone a full set of armor. Marius is going to pay for everyone's gear, everyone's food, everyone's training. The army may march under the banner Senatus Populusque Roma, but in fact, it is not an army of the Senate and people of Rome. It's an army, a private army of Gaius Marius. And it saves Rome. And it's allowed to continue. Another Roman, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, buys his own private army. After a series of foreign wars involving these private armies, they ultimately face each other in combat during the siege of Rome. Each of them has supreme power. Marius before the siege, Sulla after the siege. So now politics is not just about political assassination, it's civil war involving rich men and their private armies, who march in the name of the Senate and people of Rome, but serve the man who pays them, the man who they are dependent on. From there until the end of the civil wars is just a progression of details. Pompey, Crassus, Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, Augustus, Octavian, are all wealthy men with their private armies and navies. And in the end, Augustus captures Rome. But the Roman people, desperately afraid of more ongoing civil war, give Augustus legitimacy, give him power. They give up their freedom to him. So Octavian, who becomes Augustus, is the true ruler of Rome. And even though there's a law, no kings in Rome, which the senators who killed Caesar were following, they were following the law. Caesar was trying to make himself a king. It was pretty obvious. Octavian is, in fact, king of Rome, in everything but name. Instead, by name, he's called princeps, principal citizen or first citizen, first among equals. But he's got the power of a king, and then some. So that's the fall of the Roman Republic. It's kind of important. We'll continue tomorrow after we go over the essay, the thesis essay. We'll go over the story of the Roman Empire and Christianity. Thank you for your attention. You may talk until we dismiss, and I will be shutting off streams and videos.